All right, it is that time again. Our SMLTSA Mondays. That's what I'm going to call them from now on because we are live every Monday with the SMLTSA, bringing you all the information that you've been looking for. So if you're on there, we'd like you to interact with us. Get on there, and Rose is already on it and saying, "Are we on? We are on, Rose. We are on." So there is Rose Nika saying there, "Are we on? Anybody?" We are definitely on. I think we are only about a few minutes into it, and we will definitely have an interactive show for you guys. So just tag the person who needs to see this. Someone who is a medical technologist and has been wondering how they can open their own private practice. How can they be a part of the journal? How can they contribute either as someone who's going to write in or someone who's going to review the articles that are being sent through? So if you are that person, please go ahead and fill in the comments in there, tag the person who needs to see this, and share this into the groups, the different groups. Tag the person who needs to see this. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you Wendy. Wendy will be the first person to introduce herself today. Thank you so much for joining us. We know you could have been anywhere else in the world, but you decided to be here with us today. So Wendy, thank you so much. Let us give you the space and time for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Leah. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wendy Solomon. I currently serve on the SMLTSA EXCO as the Vice President. I also work on the journal portfolio as well as the education portfolio. My day job, I'm a CPUT lecturer, teaching on the BHSC degree. I also coordinate the articulation program offered at CPUT. I'm a ClinPath registered medical technologist. So I have practiced a few years in the past, did my training through the NHLS, worked for PathCare abroad for a few years before coming back and starting my academic career at CPUT. So thank you for signing in and listening to us today.
Thank you so much, Wendy. We definitely are looking forward to it, and we're loving the heart and the love that we're getting from you guys. So keep on liking on there. Put in a comment if you're joining us and excited to have us on here today. Siyabonga, fresh faces today, guys. So Siyabonga is part of the SMLTSA EXCO, and we'd like to hear more about Siyabonga. So Siyabonga, who are you and where are you from, and how did you end up with the SMLTSA EXCO?
Okay. My name is Siyabonga Msane. I'm also part of the SMLTSA EXCO. I'm based in KZN, Pietermaritzburg. I work for the NHLS as a cytotechnologist. I am part of the Scientific Advisory Committee in the category of cytology. My portfolio in the EXCO is public relations. I also am being shadowed in the education portfolio. What else? I'm excited to be in this platform. And yeah, I can't wait for, I'm not going to say I can't wait for the questions, but I'm excited for the platform.
Bring on the questions. So welcome, Siyabonga. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And I know we're going to get a lot from you today. And our ultimate favorite, Carol. Carol, thank you so much once more. I think a lot of people know who Carol is, but we would like for those who don't know Carol, let us know who Carol is.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And once again, it's good to be here. And thanks to Leah again for providing this platform. At the moment, I am the acting president of the SMLTSA. I'm also the chair of the National Education Committee of the SMLTSA. And in this way, I'm very involved in education. I've also been a part-time lecturer in my field of my day job, which is the head of the cytogenetics laboratory of PathCare in Port Elizabeth. But on the academic side, have been involved in SMLTSA for many, many years. I had my private practice for 10 years. And so in that way, I have the private practice portfolio of SMLTSA. Also the secretary of our Port Elizabeth branch. And just to add that all three of us here today are involved in our branch committees. Wendy, Siyabonga, and myself are currently involved in the branches of Port Elizabeth, Tygerberg in the Western Cape, and Midlands in KZN. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. So we're just going to continue on straight ahead with today's topic about private practices, right? So a lot of medical technologists want to know exactly how they can open their private practices. What does it entail? And we know that there's other practices and other disciplines where a medical technologist cannot open their own private practice. And what exactly does it mean? Is a private practice a private laboratory? So what we would like to know right now is who can start a private practice, and by definition, what is a private practice?
Okay, so this is a very, very big topic, and we touched on it last week at our last session, and I'm sure we're going to discuss more once we have questions from out there. But let's start at the beginning. So way back in 1991, after many years of senior medical technologists fighting for the right to enter private practice, we were given this right by the HPCSA, and mid-1991, the register was opened for private practice. Okay, so that's the start. We've been going for approximately just over 25 years. I opened my practice way back in 1993, so I was one of the first practices that were going. So let's start at the beginning. First of all, you need to obviously be qualified. You need to be registered with the HPC in your particular discipline, and you cannot even apply for private practice once you've been registered for 2 years. But 2 years is the minimum, and I'm sure most of you out there will realize that post-qualifying or post-registering for 2 years is the absolute minimum, because one is mostly not ready to enter into private practice on your own after only 2 years. But that's the guideline. So how do you go about it? If you go onto the HPCSA's website, you will see there is a document there which allows you to complete it, and you send it to the registration department of the HPCSA. It includes things like your discipline, your registration number, are you up to date with your CPD, where do you intend to practice, things like that, okay? They will then check HPCSA records to see if everything you have completed is in fact true, and they will then send you a letter of approval to say, for example, it's Wendy Solomon, I hereby give you recognition of applying for private practice in the field of clinical pathology. You can only enter into private practice into obviously what you've qualified in, because that is what you are going to be able to send results, to approve and send results out on. Okay. You then take that letter of approval and you send it to the Board of Health Funders, known as the BHF. And that is the group that issues you with a private practice number. Okay. You cannot start a practice without that number, because this number is which allows you to make medical aid submissions. Even if you apply for funding from a bank, for equipment, if you want to open up accounts with laboratory suppliers, all those bodies will need your practice number, okay? And you keep that practice number forever. So what goes into that practice number is, now we get to the basics. Where are you going to open up your practice? What kind of practice are you going to have? Do you intend being a sole entity? Do you intend being a partnership? All right. So let's say, for example, most people enter as a sole entity at first. You then might decide to join up with a colleague, and they then will also have to apply for private practice because you are working on your own and you are sending out results, analyzing results, whereas you are the end responsibility. Do you understand? You don't
So I have a question, Kiki, before you pass that part. So if you are going in as part, so let's say each of you started with your own sole entities, and now you want to partner up. Does that mean now you submit a whole new application and you get a new practice number for the pay?
For the pay, yes. But before you do that, your partner has to apply to the HPCSA as an individual. Okay? So everybody needs to be approved as an individual with the HPCSA. Once you've got your approval, then you can form a partnership with another medical technologist.
Okay, so you don't need the HPCSA for the partnership. So you each apply as individuals, and then you can do the partnership at the BHF. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So where the gap is up to now is that when we started off way back in the late 90s, as more and more people entered private practice, SMLTSA drew up private practice guidelines, which were accepted by the HPCSA, and to assist everybody, and mainly to assist medical aids in confirming and covering medical aid submissions. What we did is, once the practice was out there and they had contacted us to say, yes, we're ready to go, we would do a short assessment of that laboratory. It was not an accreditation by any means. It was just an assessment to see, A, does that practice actually exist? Have they got the right equipment to perform the tests that they are saying they are doing? Are they generating a proper report? Are they generating a proper account? Etc., etc. And we did that for a good couple of years until the HPCSA declared that SMILTSA does not have the legal arm to perform a legal assessment. And so it was stopped in 2014. In its place, there is a subdivision of the HPCSA called the Inspectorate Office. And this is the office that now, if anybody has complaints or queries, these queries can be sent. But where there's a big gap now is this support and guiding these practices. And this is what SMLTSA is very aware of, and that we are currently in negotiations with the HPCSA, and I'm happy to say we are very nearly complete with our new guidelines that we are about to release, where at least the practitioners entering private practice will have a nice, clear, up-to-date, current document that they can refer to. And if they are members of SMLTSA, they are welcome to contact us for support and further guidance. But there has been this gap in recent years, unfortunately not in our doing, that we have tried to fill. So let's just stop there and see what questions we get from the floor.
Currently, I don't have any questions from the audience.
Okay. So, Leah, let's just go on as to which disciplines can enter into private practice. So, for starters, the most popular discipline is ClinPath, okay, which obviously covers heme, micro, and chemistry. But in reality, Most don't do micro or do very little of microbiology just by the nature of the field. Most of the ClinPath laboratories cover 90% of chemistry and hematology referrals. Then there are quite a few cytology labs in the country. There are one or two cytology working with a ClinPath laboratory. The one field that I have noticed has been on your chat group with queries is histology. Yes. So histology is an exclusion. The reason being is you can all relate to how an histology practice works, is that the qualified histotechnologists are performing the cut-ups, the preparation of that tissue sample, but they are not sending out final tissue analysis. The pathologists are taking that role. So a histology technologist does not, in their field, they have not covered the actual analysis and the reporting of tissue samples. In day-to-day laboratory fields, that function is carried by histopathologists. And so therefore histology is the one discipline that you cannot enter into private practice. There are also a few exclusions in a cytology practice, and these are all set out under the HPCSA approval. So if you get approved, you will get this in your letter of approval. So for example,
what you can and cannot do.
Yes, yes. So in a cytology practice, your gynecological samples you can cover totally, but there are limits to what you're allowed to process in the non-gynae, because there you are again covering or hovering closely to your histology tissue analysis, okay, which requires a pathologist for that final result. So on the gynecological side, you are totally free to practice, but on your non-gynecological, there are limitations.
All right, great. I have a comment here from Rose Nykat. Rose says, can a histotech open a practice with a pathologist as partner?
Okay, so in reality, the answer is, in theory, the answer is yes. In practice, I don't know of such a dynamic. It's more likely to be the other way around, and that's basically just going from a financial point of view, okay? Because if a histotech is going to employ a pathologist, we're talking about a financial outlay, which in the beginning will be large. If they go into a partnership, that would be a totally different matter, because it depends whose partnership it is. Remember, you only have one practice number.
Yes.
So if it is the pathologist practice, then it will be the pathologist practice number and not the histotech. You understand?
Oh, yes.
So then it's going to be a pathology practice and not a medical technology practice.
Not a medical technology practice. That makes perfect sense. Rose, are you satisfied with the response? Hit us up with a comment there. Please do send in more questions and more comments, and hit the like button on there and tag the person who is not currently watching, who needs to see this, who wants to open and start their own private practice. So I would like to know, going back, Carol, so can we call the private practice a lab?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a proper lab. And this is where I would like to actually give some detail, is that many medical technologists might be super capable and competent in running their unit, their discipline under another umbrella body. But it's a totally, totally different thing to go out there and be responsible for everything yourself. And this is where many medical technologists do fall down, because they are competent in their laboratory work, but they are not competent in management. They're not competent in completing a tax return, in being a provisional taxpayer, in performing VAT, buying equipment, paying equipment off, buying supplies, and all the other aspects of running a laboratory, which is often not in your day-to-day working day.
And
And
so
this
I
is
have
where
a couple
many
of people here. Sikelela Nkosi says, I'm watching. I know he's been very excited about this topic, so I'm happy that you're watching. So if you do have a question, this is your time now. And Mpo Sakuya also says, I'm following. So they definitely are there watching and here for the information. So absolutely do hit us up with more comments and more questions. This definitely is for you. So you want to have this chance to ask any question that you might have. So my other question is, in terms of filling in those gaps, and I don't know if anyone of you guys between Sia and Wendy wants to cover this, in filling the gaps for the management of the lab and all of the other things and working and dealing with suppliers, where and how can that gap be filled? Is it on an institution level, at a private institution? Are there any other courses that one can take, business management, something else that can fill in those gaps?
Okay, so I'm going to go back here to that minimum 2 years requirement, because I think this answers the question. Most of you out there who are perhaps a senior medical technologist, or perhaps you are the head of your particular discipline in your laboratory, you would then be covering many of these management tasks in the laboratory. But if you've only been there for 2 years, you have not started on that road. You're just barely becoming competent in analyzing and reporting. So as you spend more time, and I would, in my personal opinion, I would say you must be between 5 and 10 years to consider opening up a private practice, because that's what it takes, in that you've become more exposed as to what is required on all those other levels. And many people, the reasons that they fail is not because of their competency in the lab. It's the competency on those other levels where you are stretched, and cash flow problems, and the reality of being in the business world.
Would that be okay? My other question here is, so if we're talking about private practices, so if, for example, now, is it only for the medical technologists to partner together? What if there's like an investor or a third party who is not even linked to the lab? Can they form part of the practice and fall under there, or is it just limited to medical technologists grouping themselves together? Or can they actually include someone else, like an actual someone who's been running a business, or an investor who wants to be heavily involved? You know, can they include someone else in the practice other than someone who is registered and confirmed with the Health Professions Council of South Africa?
Okay, so Leah, one always has to be guided. The HPCSA has got a set of 12 ethical booklets, which I would advise anyone before they even start and while they're preparing is to read through all these ethical booklets. And they have quite detailed pages there on what is considered associations, what is allowed, what isn't allowed, what are perverse incentives. They are very, very strict amongst that type of thing. So one has to tread carefully. But by perverse incentives, I mean by what is frowned upon. For example, we cannot open a practice with a doctor, with a general practitioner, or a specialist, a physician, because that would be a perverse incentive. in that if that doctor is referring samples to the laboratory and he is sharing in the profits of that laboratory, there's a great possibility of him servicing too much, over-servicing, because the more he refers, the more he's going
he
to
makes
profit.
himself. Yeah.
Okay, so that is a guideline which is very strictly watched. I can't say it's not happening because we don't always know, but these are the sort of things that the watchdogs out there are aware of and the medical aids are aware of, and keeping a lookout for that type of referral. So anything that has a smack of perverse incentives is frowned upon. So you are allowed to market your practice, but you're not allowed to be a McDonald's and advertise a professional service as you would for McDonald's. I'm just making a silly example, but that type of thing. The other strict guidelines that we find many people do not adhere to is the naming of the practice. Again, as per the HPCSA guidelines, for example, your letterhead and your report can't just go out as ABC Laboratories. Your name has to reflect the person whose practice it is. So, for example, you can say it's Carol Msane Medical Technology Laboratories trading as ABC Laboratories. But your name has to be reflected, because that is what all professional people are out there. If you look at the name of accountants or the name of physicians, or the naming on that report has got the name of that person on.
Right.
Okay.
So that the naming is one part that is still missing on the. Are there any other regulations? That what is the landscape like for mobile labs? Are mobile labs an option, or is that something that is already in there, or are there any restrictions on there? Because you will be asked for an address of where the lab will be, and obviously they will come in and do those inspections. But are mobile labs something that is actually feasible and working in South Africa, or is that not an option as yet?
Not really. It depends how far you want to take a mobile lab. Because if you're talking about point of care, there are, as you know, there are point of care depots. There's point of care at clinics. There's point of care at Dischem. There's point of care in doctors' rooms. So in that way, point of care is mobile. But that is not strictly a laboratory. That is feeding certain tests to a physical laboratory somewhere. The other thing that's very important is what equipment you have. Is the equipment that you have sufficient, accurate, reliable, calibrated, all those normal things which can provide a reliable, accurate result? And so going forward, I do think that some form of not accreditation, that is up to each individual to decide, but some form of assessment to maintain and uphold the medical technology name. There are some medical technologists out there running absolutely fantastic practices that we can all be very proud of. And then unfortunately, there have been others that have not upheld a good, reliable service and got into trouble and have given our medtechs not such a great name. So this is why SMLTSA has pushed for us to regulate our guidelines in a better way. And this is what I mentioned right at the beginning, that we are currently busy with this with the HPCSA, and we hope them to be released very soon after the new board is promulgated.
Absolutely amazing. Do you guys have any more comments and more questions on there? Do hit us with the like button. Dindo Kutle Dube is running and saying we are here for this. So we are really appreciating you being on here. We appreciate the love. And if you do have any more questions, please do hit us up on the comments and really appreciate you. Let's cross over to Wendy a little bit. Wendy, what is your take on this topic of opening up private practices? What preparation, since you coming from the institution side of things, what additional preparation is there at that level to prepare the upcoming medical technologists or medical scientists that are coming out of the lab? What is there that is preparing them to cross over and have this idea of whether it's business-minded or entrepreneurship? Is there anything that is added on there that gives them the idea that they don't have to just work in the lab, but they can actually have their own private practices from an institution level?
So yes, when students do the undergraduate programs at EOTs, I'm sure as part of the orientation throughout the program, they are informed that they could potentially open private practice. And like Carol said, it's after 2 years of experience. And I have to agree with Carol that 2 years does seem a bit, little. If I think of my own experience starting at a laboratory, that first year in a new job as a newly qualified medical technologist, you're very much still in a training mode, going through the various areas or benches in the laboratory, becoming more familiarized with how to analyze. So my advice to technologists out there is take the time to gain your experience. So like Carol says, if it means working for 5 years to get the necessary experience, do so. And in that 5 years, perhaps look at options of doing business-related courses. So go do a short course in entrepreneurship, business administration, project management. That is also something that you would need if you are running a business. So my advice would be to, in that time that you are gaining hands-on experience in the lab, equip yourself with other skills by doing short courses, so that when you are ready to take that step to start your practice, that you have an idea of what is expected from you.
Absolutely.
So in terms of short courses, I know, I can only speak for CPUT. There are short courses being offered that you can do on a part-time basis, like 6 weeks courses or 12 weeks, where you maybe attend a class over a weekend. And I'm sure all the other UOTs have short courses as well. So it doesn't matter where you are based, you should be able to access short courses. And your employers as well offer in-house training. So make use of those opportunities while you can.
That's so true. I like the idea also of those short courses and in-house training. It's oftentimes overlooked, but you can actually use those in your favor. And Sia, I think you have enough time to rest on this. So Siyabonga, what is your take on this one with the private labs, especially speaking for these disciplines like your cyto side, which is not a lot of people are more clean path. So for you guys in the cyto field, what is your advice for that?
Like you've just indicated, that sometimes we overlook these small steps, that in the end they build up on experience, on exposure, taking part on those portfolios in the lab, equipment, safety, all those things. They give you information so that when at the end, when you are to pursue a private practice route, you do have an idea. Hence, people should take their time. 2 years, yes, it's stipulated, but what do you know in 2 years? What have you really grasped in 2 years? And also in the context of cytology, a person who is at 2 years, that's a person who would be still a huge percentage of people at 2 years would still be at the level of being a primary screener. So this is not conclusive. This is not for everyone. Sometimes you find people who are quick, and you find that they'll be set to check or rapid review, which is the work that is implicates quality. So you can't go rush out there and open a lab whilst you still your work still needs to be checked by someone, and that someone still needs to deem you as a person who can and can check and send out work independently. So it's very important to take your time, because at the end of the day, we lab, as people who work in the lab, we are behind the scenes, and there's an inclination that you get detached on the whole objective of why you're doing this, that this is a patient at the end of the day. So quality still needs to be of priority, accuracy still needs to be of priority. So if time is of importance, experience is of importance, acquiring knowledge on those portfolios that are in the lab, because at the end of the day, even if when you open your lab, in principle, you're still going to be growing those aspects that you've learned, or what you were doing in the lab. And also, I was thinking in when on a postgraduate qualification, the BTech, there is lab management, and part of the what they teach is those things. If you were to build a lab, if the lighting, all those specific things, that one needs to know when they open a lab, they do that module does equip one with the basic, So in terms of acquiring knowledge, I was just thinking back that yes, lab management does cover a bit of aspects. Yes, it does actually cover aspects in terms of management, in terms of budgeting, in terms of your arrangement of the lab, what should you observe, in terms of your waste disposal, what do you need to observe. So it's not just saying, I want to open a lab, I'm going to open a lab. Milestones, are very important. So that's my take.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Siyabonga. So, as you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself, what about those people who are in those main labs where there are people that are running the bench, but there's also those specialized where you find that there's a QA officer, there is a safety, there's officers for everything. So what advice would you have for those people to gain those? Because as they come in, they need to run. That's what they are there for. But then they never really get the chance to go and do stock management or quality, because there's specific people that are hired specifically for those areas. Carol, what do you think can be done? What suggestion do you have for these individuals? They are exposed to those areas, and do they move around from lab to lab? Do they move to smaller labs? Do they learn after hours? What approach and advice do you have for those people in those main labs that are categorized?
Leah, I think the message I would like to put out there is that it is an excellent source of pride that our profession does have a private practice entity. But on the same note, private practice is not for everybody. And it's not that I'm closing the door or anything like that. It's like any business. You might be a very senior person for Pick n Pay, but it doesn't mean you're going to open up your own Pick n Pay. And you might not want to. It entails all sorts of different directions, like we've just been discussing. But at the end of the day, it is an option that is open for some people if you want to go that road or you want to try it. But I would definitely clarify that what we've all said again. Don't, after 2 or 3 years, leave your place of employment and think you can open up a private practice. Not in business today. You must have at least between 5 or 10 years. For starters, you have to go out there and you have to market yourself. So doctors have to refer work to you. Specialists have to refer work to you. And you can just think about it for yourself. You're going to walk into a specialist office and say, I'm Leah Malloy, I'm opening up a lab, you can send your work to me. If they could see you've only been qualified for 2 years, generally speaking, you're going to really battle to get doctors to refer work to you. So at the end of the day, it's a marketing game, just like any other business, but you are marketing yourself as a professional, supplying a reliable, accurate result. And you have to be pretty sure that you can provide that service. Because things are tough. They've got much tougher in the last 5 years or 10 years than before. But on another level, there's also a growing need in our population for medical services. So there's the two sides of the coin, but I would really caution anybody who just wants to wing it and go out and open a practice. You need to do your thorough research. You need to really sit down and draw up a business plan. How much will my equipment cost? How much will my reagents cost? Remember, some medical aids can take up to 3 months to settle a claim.
Yes.
Others can pay within a month. They can pay within a week. But all those flexibilities you have to build into your business plan. And
Absolutely.
we haven't yet touched on medical aid, and that's another huge topic, which is a cornerstone of a laboratory practice.
Absolutely. I have some amazing comments on here. So Sikelela says here, thank you so much, ladies. All my questions have been answered. And Lindo Kutle Dube says, what strategic marketing advice can the panel give to aspiring medtechs?
Are you talking in for private practice now?
For private practices. I think that the question here is, when you want to have your own strategic marketing, probably Lindo Kutle is asking, how do I place myself and my organization as a medtech?
You know, you have to market yourself. And as I say, so who is a laboratory's customers? Your customer is just the same as when you're working for a big laboratory practice. Your customer are your doctors, perhaps your clinics, certain clinics, not really government clinics, unless you're in a very rural area, because many government clinics are tied up with government laboratories. They've got their own memorandum of understanding and things like that. So you have to be able to go out there, and that is why your business plan is so important, is to be able to say, okay, what will benefit the doctor? You're going to be, the first thing that comes to mind is collection of samples. Okay, so this is how it rambles out, because somebody has to collect the samples. So are you going to hire someone, or are you going to just have someone that fetches once a day? Who's going to deliver your results? Is it only going to be electronic result? Are they also going to get a hard copy? How's the hard copy going to get there? Again, are you going to have a courier? So from the doctor's marketing perspective, the two most important things is, how often are you going to collect my samples? How quick am I going to get a result? How am I going to get a result? So those are the areas where you can strategize and maybe improve in the area that you are trying to open a practice in.
Absolutely. I think that's some great advice also, because and again for Lindo Kutle, I think when you are competing in the market, I think you need to come up and see if you are doing a strategic analysis of your competition. See what their strengths are. I mean, you will learn all those things, obviously, when you go and take these short courses, but what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are your own strengths and weaknesses and what can you capitalize on and what is your own value proposition for that. So what can you offer that is unique? So if you focus on, say, for example, a weakness of another lab that only has a depot in that area, and you can physically be there to deliver those results, collect those samples on an hourly basis, and they only come there about once a day for whatever reason, you can use that as a strategy for yourself to say, this is what I'm going to do for you. But you can only find that information when you go and speak to those people, or you also analyze for yourself and exactly ask the doctors what they're looking for. They will tell you exactly what they're looking for. Your first visit will not be you selling the business per se. Your first visit will be you asking questions to find out what their needs are. What are they happy about with what the other lab is doing? What is frustrating them? They will be very quick to say, oh, I hate it when this happened. These people only come once. Or, start and build that relationship with those doctors and see what keeps them up at night. What are they crying about? What do they wish the other lab was offering them that you can offer them? And again, you also have to know your own weaknesses to say, I'm not a lab that's been around for over 20 years. I don't have a staff complement of over 5,000. It's just me. And maybe, get to a point where you say you're going to have personalized you're going to go see them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You're going to come back to them and say, how's the service going? How can I improve? And maybe that's something that the other lab does not offer them at that time. Give them that personalized. I mean, if you write them a nice little note which is handwritten to say thank you or whatever it is, or something that makes you unique, you will be able to find in those conversations. And the nice thing about customers is they will always tell you what they want for them to have a better business or for them to be successful. So if they do want to work with you, they will tell you and guide you as to what they want you to do for them to stay a customer. So, as you're thinking about it, go and work with them and go and ask them what it is that they're looking for. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find your strategy there to say, I'm going to pinpoint on that. I know I can make this not so much a pain point, but I can make it work for myself. And that will be my own strategic marketing plan, right? Anyway, that's a long story on this.
100%. That's 100%, Leah. The big thing, I think, with any business is it's to find your gap. And that's what you've basically been saying, is to find your gap and draw up, if I can't emphasize this enough, a business plan. How much is your rent going to be? How much is your data going to be? How much must I pay my tax man once a year to do my books? It's something you've never had to do before. And these things all cost money. So that's at the one end. And the other end is what you've just described. Find the gap and market yourself. And if there's not that market that balances it out, well, then it's not the right time. Yeah. And there's many an excellent position for a medtech within a big laboratory. I mean, you can grow. It's not for everybody. But the good thing is that it is there. It is an opportunity. But it's not for everybody. One can grow and excel within a large organization as well, if that's for you. It's just various positions. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a great point here from Rose. Rose says, yeah, market yourself and your practice. Visit and chat to doctors and specialists. Sell your practice. If you don't have the skill, use or hire someone who can. I mean, in sales, we always say people buy from people. So, you have that, your uniqueness and the special unique offer that you have might be the one differentiating factor. So people definitely do buy from people, and you have to get to a point where you can prove yourself that you can, and just go and knock on those doors and ask for those opportunities and prove yourself and keep improving as you go. I think, if you're going to have to go and sell yourself, you can even start small, because I think a lot of people have the fear of sales and marketing also. So go and sell something small. Go and sell sweets in the lab so you get used to people saying no. Get used to upselling. If someone is buying one sweet, tell them, okay, I have sweeties, but I also have snacks. And so you get more. So those are the small things that, that just trains you and teaches you about selling. And, you don't have to go and sell a big lab before you start selling sweeties and snacks to the people in the lab themselves. They need to eat. So if you can just practice that skill in the first place, I think that the small thing will really go a long way. So, I mean, we're talking about money a little bit here, Carol. So before we go on, I think we've been almost here for an hour. Just to wrap it up quickly, besides the bank, where can Medtechs go for funding? Is there like institutions or organizations that are more likely to fund health-related laboratory type of institutions?
Okay, at the end of the day, I just want to go slightly back when you talk about marketing, which is a bit different in our field. It's because, remember, when you send out a result, it's got your name on it. Okay, so our results it goes right back to who was approved for private practice. You can't do the test and it's got someone else's name on. So when you go and you sell yourself to that doctor or specialist, you actually need to go yourself, in my opinion, because you're selling that you are capable and you are reliable. Because at the end of the day, it's not someone else who's going to be analyzing that sample. It's going to be you. And so when you're starting off way in the beginning, you need to build sample by sample, doctor by doctor, by thinking that you are reliable and capable of doing that particular test. For funding, always difficult, but there are these small, medium enterprises, the SMEs, that are available now. So I would suggest that you actually even go approach your bank manager and you ask your bank manager or your financial advisor is which institutions they can advise who are supporting small to medium business enterprises. But there is some funding. There is some funding out there that is available, and that's again going back to, in my opinion, you are unlikely to get funding if you've only been registered for 2 years. You haven't proven yourself yet. That's just the fact. You need to have some history and experience under your belt for people to take you seriously, and to know that you are capable, because at the end of the day, it's all to do with providing a reliable result.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we definitely have now run out of time, but this is the official website that you can go on to find out more information about the SMLTSA. Please do go on there. And if you want to go and be a part of the SMLTSA, you will find the forms on there, as well as the pricing that you will need. I actually would rather call it an investment, because we have spoken a lot about the benefits of joining and being an active member of the SMLTSA. So currently you are still having an opportunity to register with half the price, and for next year it will be the full price. So right now that's all we have time for today in terms of the private practice. Any final words from you, Wendy, from today's topic? So do hit us up with those likes and share this for those who have missed it. Keep sharing it. So Wendy, what is your final message for those who want to open up their own private practices?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask them to join the SMLTSA, because as you heard,
absolutely,
that we do offer a support structure, but only to SMLTSA members. So join us. And then whether you're wanting to open a private practice or not, I encourage medical technologists and technicians, lab assistants, or all medical laboratory professionals to join the SMLTSA, because the more members we have, the stronger we are as an association, and the more change we can affect in our profession. So, and then thank you again, Leah, for providing the platform for us to share this information, and thank you to all the viewers.
Absolutely. We actually welcome that. Carol, actually, when Wendy spoke of that, one thing came to mind. So when we were talking about who can open their own private practices, what about technicians and scientists before we wrap this up?
Okay, so scientists can, well, medical laboratory scientists can, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So the new medical laboratory scientists that fall under medical technology, they can. Technicians cannot, because why? A technician's scope of practice is that they cannot sign out a result. Remember, that goes back to the core difference between the technician and the technologist. That the scope of practice, a technician cannot sign out a final result. They have to work and sign out a result underneath the auspices of a technologist, medical laboratory scientist, or a pathologist. And so in that essence, they cannot work as a sole entity, and therefore they cannot open a private practice. But a medical laboratory scientist can, and a medical technologist can.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. And if you have missed and you are a medical technician and you missed the session we had on articulation, you can go onto the YouTube channel and Facebook for you to be able to find that discussion so you can see how you can articulate as a medical technician to a medical technologist. Siyabonga, what's your final word for our audience who are very much interested in opening up their own private practices?
My final words would be, if there was ever a time for us to realize the importance of our profession, it would be now. And I know that we are other, but I'm just emphasizing.
We are slowly changing that.
We are moving back to being called we are. So the more people we have who are equipped, who will pursue, who if in a context of a work environment, do not sit down. You know, I know that we call our labs routine labs. You are not routine. You know, take part, learn as much, grasp as much, because even the tiniest of things, according to our perception, as we may think, but it's things that may help us in the long run. So be active in the lab. Even our managers, we plead with them, open opportunities for us, you know, open opportunities for people in the lab to partake in different portfolios, because by that they're gaining knowledge. I was going to say something else. I've forgotten what else I was going to say. So yeah, that's that. And people, please, let's join the SMLTSA. If I were to share my experience just briefly, I would just liken it to one walking into a room with no expectation, or a house, and when you get there, there are these different things, you know, you want to grab there, you want to grab there. There's so much to be involved in. That is for your growth. That is for the growth of our profession as a whole. So it's individuals who pursue these things, and then we get a collective difference, or we improve together, you know, as the profession. So people, if there was ever a time for you to join the SMLTSA, it's now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think adding on to that about the managers giving opportunities, I think as individuals in the laboratory, ownership is also very much one thing. We cannot sit and expect the managers to keep the doors open for opportunities. We need to go and ask for them and actually act and say, I want to learn about accreditation. I want to, because we cannot expect the managers to give that space without anyone asking for it. So I think as much as we do plead for the managers to open those spaces, I think we also need to encourage ourselves to be the ones actually taking the initiative to say, can you allow us to? And show that you're interested in learning and getting more information. And Carol, what is your final say on this hour?
Thanks, Leah. I just want to echo what Siya has just said, and thank you, Siya, for joining us tonight. It's been wonderful having Siya as part of our team. And I think what she just touched on now is so true, is that the more individuals that join, it's a collective action that then happens. But each little one plays their part. And so I'd like to really encourage everyone to play their part and grow in their own close network. And I can honestly say from personal experiences, the more you do, the more you grow. And the more you meet other people and opportunities arise. And so thank you for this once again. And we didn't even cover the journal. So I think we need to put that as a topic for Wendy for next time again. But thank you very much.
Thank you so, so much. I think we really appreciate this. And before we run out of time, thank you so, so much. And we will do this again the following Monday. SMLTSA Mondays. All right, there I am. All right. I think I got disconnected on this, but it's fine. So I'm just gonna wrap it up. I think we are good to go. So let me just end this live, and thank you so much for everyone for joining in. Really excited. It's always a good time, man. So we'll see you again next week on Monday, SMLTSA Mondays, and we will catch on up with more information, obviously, about the private practices and about the journal itself. So let's get involved. Head on to the website, smltsa.org.za, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.